So, Governor or patron, thank you for joining us, and thank you to the former patron and current APS member, Tom Wolf, for making this happen. Thank you, Tom. So, do you know what it means to be the patron of the society?
No, and I feel quite inadequate being here with Governor Wolf, who, I mean, that's a legit patron right there. With not only his great work as an elected leader, the governor of the Commonwealth, and to First Lady Wolf as well. We thank you for your service. We thank you for your friendship over so many years. But Governor Wolf also has a PhD. I don't have that. I've got a JD. So I'm not sure that I have any useful knowledge to impart upon you. Nor do I feel adequate being here as the patron in line of what Ben Franklin did. But I will do my best here today to impart some knowledge, and you all can decide if it's useful at the end of our conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I might share what it meant in the 18th century and what I think it might mean today. In the 18th century, the state chartered the American Philosophical Society because they realized how important it was for an institution like the Philosophical Society to promote knowledge in the early republic, to sustain democracy. And that's why the state wanted to support this organization. And that's why the patron's the governor of it. Today, it means I can't ask any hard questions.
You can ask me whatever you want.
But we pulled out from our library. We have an incredible library across the street, 14 million pages of manuscripts. We have a letter from the founder of Pennsylvania, the first governor, William Penn. And this is a letter he wrote in 1710. So this is almost 30 years after founding Pennsylvania. And you know, when they established Pennsylvania, when they were in England, the Quakers were persecuted. They were imagining this utopia that was going to be across the Atlantic. They all were in the opposition to the reigning power in the United Kingdom, in England. And they imagined a utopia here because they were all united. As soon as they got to Pennsylvania, they realized there were a lot of things that divided them. And there are all these partisan troubles. There's all this politics happening. This letter that Penn wrote describes to the assembly the cause of many of the troubles and oppressions that he's met with from the assembly. So I want to ask you, what's politics like today in Pennsylvania?
In 30 seconds or less. I want to answer your question. I want to just start with a personal story and sort of my journey in learning about Penn. The first day you get sworn in as governor is very ceremonial. You take the oath of office. I was surrounded by Governor Wolf and former governors. People are wishing you well. And it was an enjoyable day. But the day I was really looking forward to was that first full day where you get to go to work. For me, early in the morning, I arrived in the governor's office, and it was empty, but for a note on the desk from Governor Wolf. My staff had all left me in there. I had literally nothing to do at that moment. The work hadn't started piling up yet. I read Governor Wolf's letter, and then I looked up from behind the desk in the governor's office, which I'd love for you all to come and see. And there's a portrait staring right down at you of William Penn. I've spent a lot of time since that quiet moment I had, and by the way, I've not had a quiet moment since those 30 seconds, thinking about Penn, thinking about why he founded this place, the promise of a place that would be warm and welcoming for all people, particularly people of all different faiths. I'm not sure Penn would have ever imagined American Jewish governor looking down at his portrait here, sitting in that office. But I bet he'd be proud of how we've evolved and how we've grown and how I think we have stayed true to that founding principle of being a place that is warm and welcoming for all. So when you ask me what is politics like today in Pennsylvania, I try and think of all this through the prism of Penn. I read a lot about him. I'm far from a scholar, as so many of you are in this room. But I think a lot about my actions every day, the kinds of bills that I want to get to my desk, the policies I pursue. Would it be the kind of thing that would enforce that message, enforce that hope that Penn had for us when he started, of being a place that would be warm and welcoming for all? Would our classrooms be warm and welcoming for all students? Would our streets be warm and welcoming for all Pennsylvanians and all people seeking more freedom in their lives to come here? Would the jobs be available to more and more people and be warm and welcoming for them? So I think about Penn a lot when we do this kind of work. As for our politics today, I mean, on the surface, you'd have to say Pennsylvania is the swingiest of all swing states, right? It is the determiner of what will happen in our national elections. I would also say it's a microcosm for kind of how people feel in a particular moment. And there's an independence streak that I absolutely love. People talk a lot about what just happened in the national election, that came about, 6 months ago? It feels like 60 years ago. But I remind them that 2 years prior, I won an election for governor by a pretty good amount. And a few years before that, Governor Wolf won an election for governor by a good amount. The point I'm trying to make is you can go back through our modern history of politics, and what you see in Pennsylvanians is an independent streak where they're able to evaluate candidates carefully and thoughtfully, where they're able to vote in one election for Republicans, another election for Democrats. Throughout all, while different messages get sent through our politics, I think that independence streak is something that has remained pretty true and pretty constant, and something that I think is really wonderful and something that is really exhilarating as an elected official, as someone with 13 million bosses out there, that folks are willing to kind of evaluate you on the merits. And while the national politics we have a big impact on, we tend to look at things much more parochially and much more locally, and I enjoy that quite a bit. I'm happy to dive deeper into any of these things, but as I think about Pennsylvania today, our politics today, I think about independence and an independent streak, and the fact that Pennsylvanians understand they have an outsized role in making big decisions, not just for our Commonwealth, but for our country.
Yeah, and in fact, Penn never realizes the harmonious utopia, but the idea of religious liberty and having a door that will welcome people from all over does manifest itself. In 1776, Pennsylvania is probably the most diverse state in terms of population, but also economically. It's the breadbasket. It has all these natural resources. And in 1776, everyone was looking to Pennsylvania for guidance because they knew whichever way Pennsylvania went, so too would the colonies for independence. So it played a central role then, it plays a central role today. When you travel the state, are there values or principles that you see uniting left and right and in between in Pennsylvania?
That's one of the things I love so much about serving as governor, and I would bet something Governor Wolf loved so much. I love getting out of that office with Penn's portrait, not because his portrait is there, but I just enjoy getting out as much as I can, listening to people, meeting them where they are, learning from them. And notwithstanding the way our politics and our governing is described in the media today, all forms of media, where they would want you to think people are so different, we're so divided, things are completely being ripped apart. The reality is, when I get out of the office and I travel around rural, urban, suburban communities, folks are kind of basically the same. The terrain looks different, they may look different, but when you have the deep conversations with them, they all basically want the same four things I have found. They want a really good school for their kids and grandkids because they know that that's the foundation for all opportunity in the future, right? So they want that strong educational system. Second, they just want to know that they're going to be safe in their communities. Now, safety is defined differently depending upon where you live, but they want to know that they can go through life not having to worry about their kids' safety and welfare. Third, they want to know that in the community that they love, in the zip code where they were raised, they can find opportunity for themselves, for their kids, and for their grandkids long into the future, meaning we need to have economic opportunity in all different parts of our communities. Now, sometimes economic opportunity is training to be a farmhand. Other times, economic opportunity is learning, life sciences at, the University of Pennsylvania. It always looks different in terms of what that opportunity is, but what is common throughout is people want that opportunity in the community they love. And the fourth thing I hear about from everybody, no matter where I am, rural, urban, suburban, Republican, Democrat, they want more freedom in their lives. Now, we might define that a little bit differently. I might define freedom as giving women the ability to make decisions over their own bodies, your ability to marry. The ability to marry who you love and be comfortable in your own skin and who you are. While we may have honest differences and debates about those things, freedom is a central theme throughout all communities I visit. I think that's one of the reasons why we've been successful in this business, why Governor Wolf was successful, is because if you understand those four threads that sort of bind everybody together, you stop looking at our Commonwealth as areas of differences, the way the media and other outside agitators would like you to look at it, and you find the common humanity in one another. Again, back to Penn, back to the hope that he had for this place, an area where we could find that common humanity, and it would be centered around making sure everybody felt warm and welcome and involved and invited here in Pennsylvania.
So I love that story about William Penn in the office, and not just because I'm a historian, but you talked about having this brief moment of time where you had a little time, and then all of a sudden the press of work happened. And none of us, except for Governor Wolf, have been in that seat to understand all the pressures and demands you face, particularly on your time. I can only imagine, I've just been in the back waiting for you, that you're going from one meeting to the next, one speech to the next. Could you take us into what it's like to make decisions? As a governor, you're in a room filled with people who believe in evidence-based research and that this evidence can help promote useful knowledge. How, as governor, do you make a decision, and how do you use evidence to help and get enough evidence you can trust to make an informed decision?
I think the fundamental responsibility of an executive, of a governor, is to make decisions. The entire system grinds to a halt if you're paralyzed with fear or if you're paralyzed with inaction. You've got to make decisions. And so every single day when something comes to my desk, you have to make a decision. And I will tell you, Governor Wolf knows this, none of them are easy, because the easy decisions get made by the 80,000 people that work for you in the Commonwealth. You only get the hard ones. So you have to make decisions. And so I am in a constant mode of taking in information and then spitting out an answer. Yes, no, or we need more time, we need more information in order to make an informed decision. I believe in informed decisions. I believe in data. I believe in science. I know that not everybody does nowadays, but I still do. And the way I make decisions is to surround myself with a whole lot of people who have different worldviews than me, who come from different walks of life than me, maybe registered different parties than me. And I enjoy sitting around the conference table in the governor's office more than, solely behind the desk, and debating and discussing these things with my team and with outside experts who we bring in to help us make decisions. And I recognize that in every meeting I have, and typically they're between 20 and 30 minutes, I don't like very long meetings, after we've had all the information laid out, after I've done my reading, which I tend to do prior to these discussions, my job at the end of the meeting is to say A or B, this way or that way, and make a concrete decision, and then trust my team to go out and execute on it. I am not a micromanager by any stretch, but I do enjoy getting in the weeds of the information. I enjoy understanding it, and I enjoy taking my own experiences out in the community and bringing that to the decisions that need to be made in order to execute. This manifests itself in different ways. In emergency situations like I-95, where someone needed to make a decision, we were going to go this way and we were going to get it done and get it done quickly. And then in broader policy discussions in terms of how to move a bigger issue forward. One thing that I appreciate so much about this job are the people I get to surround myself with every day. The smart people that challenge me, the smart people that disagree with me. I find through that process, we're able to make better decisions, more informed decisions. And I think that is my responsibility, is to make decisions for the people of Pennsylvania every day, and to do so with as much knowledge as humanly possible. I'll close this answer with this. I remember reading a long time ago a book written by General Colin Powell. General Powell wrote a section that always stuck with me. I don't remember if it was a section of a chapter or a whole chapter about how he makes decisions. And he talked about the information flow that any executive, in his case a general, has to deal with. And having zero amount of information is none. Having 10 amount of information is the most information you can have. The problem with making a decision at 0 is it's a stupid decision. It's uninformed. At 10, the decision has probably already been made for you because all the information's come to light and the issue has kind of moved on. I think about that all the time when I'm making decisions. So I kind of want to be in that 4, 5, 6 sweet spot. 6 is ideal. 4 sometimes is necessary in an emergency situation. But the bottom line here is you want to have enough information to make an informed decision. You want to have a spirited debate with people who disagree with you. But then you have to remember that your job is to make decisions and keep the process moving along and allow your team to execute. And I thought General Powell's approach was really helpful to me as I was sort of starting out in this business, and has really stuck with me all these years.
Thanks. So we're limited on time, so I just want to ask a couple more questions. The first is to just broaden out your view on governing. And as governor, you're the executive. You have a lot of decisions to make, but you also have to work with there are checks and balances. There's a legislature, there's a Supreme Court that here in Pennsylvania is elected. What do you see is the proper role for an executive in a democracy and the relationship between an executive and a legislature?
You are in a place where we still have checks and balances. So our government still works that way. And I respect checks and balances. I really do. I may not love the daily grind of checks and balances, but boy, oh boy, is it important. Look, I was last year the only governor in the entire country with a divided legislature, Senate led by Republicans, House led by Democrats. I think now there's 2 other states, if I'm not mistaken, that have divided legislatures. So for any bill to reach my desk, it needs Republican and Democratic votes. So I am mindful that every day when I go to work, I need to be able to build a coalition of Republicans and Democrats alike. So I start the conversation by believing the executive, the governor's job, is to lay out a vision, to lay out goals, to lay out a purpose in keeping with the needs of the good people of Pennsylvania, and present that, whether in a budget or a bill or what have you, to the legislature for their consideration. And by the way, also be open to their ideas throughout this process of something they see that perhaps I don't see. And then to work in a collaborative way to get those things to my desk. We've been incredibly successful at solving big problems that have existed for decades. Governor Wolf knows a lot of folks in the legislature love to talk about these problems and then not actually solve them. We have. We waited 20 years, but we got a big tax cut for seniors. We waited about 60 years, but we finally decoupled a fund that literally forced the state police and our road and bridge construction folks to fight with one another for a limited dollar. We reformed our pharmacy benefit manager system to put more money in your pockets and less money in the middlemen's pockets. We built on Governor Wolf's success and passed more criminal justice reform. Thanks to Governor Wolf's smart budgeting, we had enough resources available the day I took office to actually begin to fix our unconstitutional education system. These are just a few examples of problems that existed for a while that we're solving together by working with Republicans and Democrats alike. And the way I do that is understand that there's 2 parts of this. One, there's the theatrics of it all. And so I'm very willing to let Republicans go out and bash my brains in if it helps them, curry favor with their constituents, as long as they vote yes at the end of the day, right? And 2, I'm very open to their ideas. I put a blueprint forward on reforming higher education in Pennsylvania, and I specifically didn't put a bill forward because I wanted their ideas. They brought their ideas together, and we ultimately passed some higher ed reform that involved Democratic and Republican lawmakers to make the process better and stronger. So I get that there's the theatrics of divided governing that you have to go through. You all read a lot of that in the newspaper every day. I encourage you to ignore a lot of the theatrics and look at the results. But I very much understand the need to help people of both parties bring something back to their constituents, bring something back to their communities, bring something back to their schools or their neighborhoods that's meaningful for them. And my job as the executive, in addition to laying out the big, broad vision and bold vision, is helping them bring those things back to their communities, helping them feel a measure of success. Politics should not be a zero-sum game. It shouldn't be that if the Republicans win, the Democrats have to lose. I'm talking about in the governing. I'm not talking about in the electoral part of it. We can all win. We can all find wins. And so my job as the executive is to find those areas where we can all win together and allow them to get credit and allow, our folks to get credit, and then everybody does better at the end of the day.
Okay. So I've got good news for us, bad news for you. We actually have more time than they originally told me.
I'm enjoying this. Keep going.
But that also means I've run out of questions. Now I have to ask you the hard ones. So when you look at governing and you think about effective governing, and you've been at every level of government, you've served in the state legislature representing a local community, you've been a county commissioner, you've been attorney general, you've been governor. If you could wave a magic wand and change something about either the structure of government or how government functions without replacing people that are elected in their offices, so you have to deal with the current people, what change do you think we could do to create a more efficient and effective governing system?
I have to keep both branches of the legislature? Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I think timeline for action, right? If the legislature were forced to act on things, by the way, I'm not saying things that I would like, but just forced to act on things within a set period of time so that we could kind of call the question on things and things couldn't get kicked down the road, I think that would be a helpful reform. I think that would be an important reform to the process here. Again, I'm not suggesting I would like everything that would come from that, but sometimes inaction does great damage to the needs of the people of Pennsylvania. And as the only one elected who has a window into what all Pennsylvanians are thinking, as opposed to just someone in a particular district, I can oftentimes see problems that exist for everyone that maybe some lawmakers aren't able to see in a timely manner. And so I would like the ability to say, okay, we don't have to agree on the issue of, energy, but we got to finally have a debate on it, and we got to finally have some votes on it. We got to finally decide if you're going to put a bill on my desk or if we're going to agree that we can't agree. And that is ultimately, I think that would be a useful reform to our system.
And again, you've served at so many different levels. You've been in and around the governorship for decades. Once you took office, what surprised you about being governor? Was there something unexpected or a perspective that changed by sitting in that seat?
I served as a state representative, county commissioner, attorney general, and now as governor. And I had a window into the governors over the last 20 years, including my dear friend Governor Wolf. So I got to see the work that they did, generally. And so I had a pretty good sense of the issues that confronted a governor. What I think I didn't appreciate about this job is the importance of a governor showing up and the importance of a governor letting a community know that I value the work that they're doing. Letting a leader of a nonprofit know that the work you're doing is changing lives. Letting those students know that they're seen and they're heard and we appreciate them here and we respect them here. I guess I'm saying I didn't appreciate the importance of showing up and how that would impact a community. And I'm very aware that it's not that Josh Shapiro's there, it's that the governor of the Commonwealth is there. Just yesterday I was in Meadville at a wonderful small liberal arts college called Allegheny College. Meadville is a community in northwestern Pennsylvania, and Allegheny College was really premier liberal arts college, was investing in skills-based training for local folks in Meadville. Their students and their professors were involved, but this is less about the degree you get from from Allegheny College, and more about caring about the community in Meadville. I showed up there to celebrate the work that they were doing and to make clear how much I care about skills-based learning and creating opportunity for people in communities that oftentimes get forgotten. And look, they appreciated the sort of ceremony of a governor showing up, but I think what those professors, what those students, what the people in the community really cared about and appreciated is, damn, the governor thinks this is important. This is important to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. This is important to our future. And that is one of, feels like millions of examples I've had along the way where showing up is really able to enforce and reinforce the work that folks are doing. I'll share one more story with you because I'm incredibly proud of her. My wife, Lori, our First Lady, who, as Tom and Francis know, is kind of a reluctant First Lady, a very private person. incredibly supportive of me, but not someone who ever looked to be out front. And a few weeks into this new role as First Lady, I asked her, what is it that you want to focus your time and attention on? She said, I want to go and visit different nonprofits that are doing life-changing work that get no attention. They're not in the papers, maybe they're not getting grant dollars, this and that. And she went to many of them, and one sticks out in my mind as an example. A woman had been raising money to buy, and this is maybe not a subject that often comes up in here, but follow me on this, to buy pads and tampons for women, young women and girls in school, because we learned that a lot of poor young women and girls would literally miss school when they got their period. And it's not something they wanted to talk about. Their parents weren't able to provide them with the products that they needed in order to come back to school, and the schools didn't have it. Lori came home thinking, wait a minute, we're providing toilet paper and paper towels and soap and all kinds of stuff to schools. Why aren't we providing pads and tampons to schools? Now, when Lori suggests something to me, that is more than a suggestion. That's, you better do it. She went and built a coalition that, for the first time ever, funded in our state budget free pads and tampons in every high school, in every state college and university, in our state parks, in all of our state buildings. And what she did was she took the work of this one nonprofit here in southeastern Pennsylvania and elevated that work to have an impact on women and girls all across Pennsylvania. One example of the many that she's done. So I share that with you because at the end of the day, I think showing up, listening to people, taking their problems and making them our priorities, that's the part, I think, of being a governor, being a first lady, I did not understand until I stood in the office, until I saw the impact of our presence out in the community. Look, I saw Governor Wolf do it, but you don't sort of understand it internally until you're in that role. And I take that responsibility as seriously as I do signing a bill into law or giving a speech. I take that responsibility of listening to people, elevating their causes, and making things happen very seriously and using the power of this position to help make their lives better.
So can I ask you for some... So can I ask you for some personal advice in a very public setting?
Sure.
As you know, there have been a number of decisions that have impacted universities and research institutions. And one of the things that we're doing as an organization, we've been talking about what is the role for a place like the American Philosophical Society to play in this moment. What can we do to help have a positive impact in the things that matter the most to us? So if you were the CEO of the APS and not the governor of Pennsylvania...
I mean, I am the patron.
Yes,
so,
that's right.
Yeah.
What would you do?
Look, I think it is clear to everyone right now, and I mean, let's just be really straight. Whether you voted for Donald Trump or not, it is clear that he is governing differently than any other president in our history. It is clear that he is pushing the bounds of executive authority. It is clear that he is trying to blur the necessary lines of checks and balances. It is clear that he is interpreting the Constitution differently than others. Whether you agree or disagree with that, I think we can all agree that that is an accurate assessment structurally of what is happening in this nation right now. I also think at the same time, we are less bound to history than we have ever been before. We have been less bound to fact and useful knowledge than we are at any time before. And that is having concrete effects on everyday Pennsylvanians and everyday Americans. And I think if you are able to take the lessons of history that you all know so well here, the founding documents, the founding principles that we study here, and show people how that impacts their lives every single day. Not just that this is some quaint reminder of a yesteryear, but rather your lives are being directly impacted today because these foundational documents that protect your rights are not being adhered to. And this is how your life is being affected by that. This is how your life is being harmed by that Or, by the way, you may view it differently. This is how your life is being helped by that. But having a conversation about that where you're taking the theoretical, the historical, and turning it into practical impacts on their lives, I think that would be the most helpful thing this society could do right now. We shouldn't speak about checks and balances as something that Ben Franklin was fond of. We should speak about how checks and balances impacts your kid in your, public high school every single day. How checks and balances protect the rights of minorities in our communities. I think that kind of stuff is very, very important. And showing the practical effect of what is happening in D.C. right now on people's lives through the prism of what you know, the knowledge you have, and the history that is so unique to this place, I think that would be very, very important.
So now we're back to the final two questions. It's good news for you, bad news for us. So one of the things that is at issue here, the founding principles you talk about, some people talk about them as first principles. These were principles that at one point brought people together around the nation. When you think about the divisions in the country today, not just in Pennsylvania, how or what might bring us together, perhaps not to agree, but in the words of Mary Beth Norton, who I got to interview a few years ago, and more recently Jeffrey Rosen, who was on this stage, the CEO of the National Constitution Center, to disagree without being disagreeable. How can we get there and build better collegiality across the aisle?
Helping people see their common humanity. It goes back to what I said earlier, and understanding that voter in a rural community who might have made a different choice for president than you would have, they love their kids as much as you love yours, and they want their kid to get a good shot in life and have a safe community and a job in the neighborhood that they love. And understanding that there's a lot more that unites us than divides us, and I truly believe that there's a lot more in our common humanity that is uniting than dividing. I'll just share with you very personally. I mean, obviously, about 2 weeks ago, the governor's residence was, firebombed. There was an arson attack. The arsonist intended to kill me if he found me. My family and I were sleeping there at the time. For as traumatic as that event was, what has been so unbelievably comforting and encouraging to me and to Lori and to our kids is our shared humanity, the shared blessings that people have bestowed upon us, their willingness to invite us into their communities and share their stories of trauma or grief or sadness and tell us how they got through it and what they did to strengthen their souls from a difficult experience. I'm sure a lot of these people that shared that with us didn't vote for me or don't share my views on issues. But there really is, I have found so much goodness in the people that I have the honor of representing. And the lines that the media and others would draw and show divisions in are a whole lot blurrier than what it might seem. The kids wanted to do something for the firefighters that, literally ran past us as we were coming out of the house in order to put the fire out and save the lives of those who were there. They wanted to do something nice for them. And they said, well, we should cook them a meal. I said, well, I can't cook, so I don't know that I want to poison a bunch of firefighters. But we got together with celebrity chef Robert Irvine, who does amazing work. I think Patrick Murphy's here, he knows him. Does amazing work for veterans and others. And we served a meal to these firefighters from South Central Pennsylvania who responded to the call. At the end of the meal, I had taken the time to talk to each one of them. An elderly man, probably about 90 years old, a Christian chaplain from the Penn Township Fire Department in the Harrisburg area, came over to me. Now, you can't judge a book by its cover, but I don't know that I'm politically his cup of tea, right? He came over to me with this beautifully typewritten letter signed by every single member of his department, a small volunteer fire department. It was a beautiful note. On the back, this Christian chaplain wrote a prayer that was incredibly important to him from the book of Numbers. It happens to be a prayer that I refer to as the priestly blessing. It's a blessing that since the day our first child, Sophia, was born, I pray over our children nightly. We didn't share the same faith. We probably don't share the same politics. We don't share the same generation that we're from. Yet we were bound by a shared humanity in a belief in something bigger than us, and also a belief in the goodness of God and the blessings of God that could help heal us. I see examples of this every single day. I wish that is the story that was shared more in our society every day, that common humanity, that common purpose, that shared love that people have for one another. I know there's some of you in this room hearing this who think, well, Gov's just being a little bit naive because things are really bad out there and people really are divided. Yeah, our politics are divided, and our politics get ugly sometimes, and our elections are tough, right? But if you actually had leaders taking their cues from the people and honored the goodness of the people of this state, as opposed to maybe sometimes drifting into some of the dangerous areas of politics, the world would be a far better place. So what I'm trying to say to you is people are good. They're inherently good. They're inherently fair. They're inherently decent, and they inherently care about the same things. They need to remind their leaders of that goodness sometimes. And we need to find our better angels as we go about our work every single day. I think you all can be an important part of that, reminding people of those foundational principles that united this nation, not just back in the 1700s, but have united us at key parts of our lives. Maybe most recently, September 12th, 2001. Finding ways to bring people together in our politics should be a cause of this organization. That is my hope as your governor. That's my hope as your patron, that we're able to use this organization to listen to people more, and to use that plus our shared history to encourage leaders to be better and to do better and to take their cues from the people.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great. Thank you.